Hi everyone, welcome to the Motograph World channel. I'm Mari and today we will be taking a look at the new Kia Sedona. So let's take a look at what has changed. So the Kia Sedona is actually a representative minivan in the Korean market, and I believe that this new version will be very popular with revamped design. And now looking at the overall view, you see that it has much more presence and it looks sturdier while it's standing on the road. So I think that a lot of our users and drivers would like that a lot. You'll see two distinct changes in terms of the design. First, the radiator grille and also the headlamps here. Personally, there are two things that I do not really like about the new model. One of them is the radiator grille. I'll get to that. But first, actually the headlamps and how it actually connects onto the radiator grille, I think that gives it a much more modern and futuristic look. And it's the overall trend in the car design market in which you have these headlamps kind of merge with the radiator grille. But if you look at it, the radiator grille for me, it really doesn't cut it because it really, I don't know what they were going with this. It reminds me of, do you remember Bane in The Dark Knight or maybe Venom? Imagine the teeth coming out. But I think it's quite divided in terms of who likes the design and who doesn't. So now taking a look at the side profile, you can see at a glance that the design has become much more improved. You see much wider windows, and I think that the viewing angles or the viewing sights will be much better. One thing here is that the C-pillar is accentuated. I mentioned that there are two design features that I don't really understand, but one of them is the radiator grille and the other is the C-pillar. I kind of don't really understand this kind of chrome or this metallic C-pillar design, but once again, there may be some drivers that really like this feature. Other than that, I really like it because it's much more sturdier. It has horizontal lines. It also has the floating roof feature, which I really like. And there's a lot of designs these days in which the floating roof sinks, but this one is quite linear and it goes straight through, giving it a much more masculine presence. So one more feature that I'd like to explain about the side is the side power sliding doors. And it opens quite easily, but for me, I thought that the door would open up a little bit wider. If you can see, it opens up just before the headrest of the back seats, but I thought that it would actually move further behind, but this is all you can get in terms of opening up the doors. So this may be slightly inconvenient for people if you want to go in and out without kind of brushing against the door. So here you have the 19-inch wheel and the tires that are attached to the car. You have the options of the 18-inch and the 19-inch wheels, two options for all of the models, whether it's a 7, 9, or 11-seater. Just like the front, there's a lot of design changes put to the back, and I personally love how it's changed. Once you see the lights come in, you'll see the linear tail lights coming in, and that has simplified the design to a great extent. But then again, you have a much more wider stance on the back, so that gives it a masculine look as well. I personally think that it looks much bigger with the new design features, but I think from the back, it looks quite nice. So now let's open up our trunk to see how big it is. As you can see, it's an automatic open as well as automatic close. This one also has foldable seats that you can pull out. They're quite small and narrow, but nevertheless, you still have this option. And now, let's put it down and see how many luggages we can put in. I bet that you'll probably be able to store one of the bigger luggages and maybe one more of these carry-ons if you would want that extra space. But there is a slight hump over here. You might have to kind of lift up your luggage to put it in. But nevertheless, you can put in a lot of different luggages with the bigger sizes even, and much more storage for you and your kids if you have any in the back seat. In Korea, we have two different options. You have the diesel version as well as the gasoline version. But in the United States, you'll only have the gasoline version. GDI engine, G3.5 GDI engine is included with the 8-speed transmission. So this one has a maximum horsepower of 294, and as for mileage, I guess it will differ from city driving to highway driving, but the comprehensive mileage is around 9.1 or 9 kilometers per liter. So if you can see inside, you see that it's quite full. You don't see a lot of extra space hanging around. If you see, I kind of presume that the engine has become more centric or put towards the center in order for better balance of the car. And if you see here too, I think this is one of maybe the advantages of a Kia car. This is the air filter, and it's made so that it make it easy for you to change the air filters. So now here you have a couple of different levers in order to adjust your seat. So I will try to fit it for my height. This is the lowest that it will go in terms of your steering wheel. So I will leave it at that. Okay. So now we're inside, and you can see that it has completely changed in terms of the composition. It kind of reminds me of the new Kia K5 model. I believe that the overall interior design is following alongside the other models in the Kia lineup. As for the line of sight, in terms of visuality, it's quite open, and I bet it will be very easy to drive because of all of the white space. And even with the side mirrors, they're attached onto the door, so you don't have any blind spots. You see that little gap on the front there, so that allows you a little bit more visibility in terms of the blind spots. I think they've upgraded the seats quite a lot. The design has changed. I also like the color, actually. This is a light gray, slightly beige color. So overall, they're quite comfortable to sit in. They are slightly small for the size of this car. Maybe some bigger or taller people might find the seat a little bit smaller. But in terms of comfort, it's quite comfortable. And even with the back and the headrest, when you're driving long distances, I believe that this will come in real handy. And you can also see that these seats, both the passenger and the driver's seat, have both heating and cooling functions to the seats. You have the ventilation in 3 stages and the seat heating in 3 stages as well. I believe that some of our viewers mentioned that they didn't like such of a glossy finish because of all of the dust that it gathers, but you still see middle frame here all in black, high glossy plastic material. But I do like the new display system. This is the 12.3-inch display. You have the wide view here, and even with the panels, they've become more digitized. Here you all have the touch panels, and you also have the rotary transmission. For me, I think if you want a sporty drive, I much like the handle system. But in terms of a much more comfortable drive like the Sedona, I think that this will be quite easy, and it's much more intuitive because it's just a simple twitch with the hands, and you don't have to put in too much effort. You have 2 compartments here in which you can store them, and I also want to show you this part. The middle console doesn't really have that much of a deep storage unit. You could probably store maybe 3 water bottles inside, but that's probably it. It's not that deep. The glove box isn't quite deep either. So if you're considering this to be one of your average sized water bottles, it might not close all the way. You can put it in this way. So now I'm sitting in the second row. The adjustment for the seats, you have the front leaning and then it leans back as well. And this is automatic, so it's much easier to control if you have kids sitting at the back. You also have these. And as for headroom as well, since I'm sitting and I'm 162 centimeters, you have a lot of headroom, maybe 2 fists above my head. That's plenty of room. And there is this kind of hump right here. I'm not really sure if this was actually a characteristic of the previous Sedona as well, but I just noticed it in the new version where you have this line and a curvature and you have a wider window, but nevertheless this space is a bit narrower. If you had the door be wider, it would have been even better. You have more space right here. Third row is slightly tighter than the second row, and I think it goes on. The last row will probably be the most uncomfortable, but in terms of the actual seats, they're the same as the second row seats, so it's basically what you can expect, except for the armrest. You only have one armrest here, whereas you have the cup holders on your right-hand side or your left-hand side. This is the 9-seater version in which you can fold the last row seats, but if you were to have maybe a 7-seater or the 11-seater, it will be a different configuration. Once again, you have the 7, 9, and 11-seater options to choose from depending on the size of your company. So this version, if you are sitting in the third row, you'll be hidden by the C-pillar, so you won't have a window right next to you. The window from the second seat or the second row is quite wide, so you will have a little bit of visibility from this wide window, but not directly next to you because it will be hidden by the C-pillar. And even with the last window, it's quite small. Even though it had the floating roof and the bottom part was slightly lower, it's not that much of a big or wide window, and they don't open, so it will just be a clear glass. As for the panoramic sunroof, this doesn't have the panoramic sunroof. It only has a dual windows, so it will be a little bit uncomfortable maybe for the back seat people because you still have this little hump right here and the headroom might be a little bit lower. But still, it do have access a little bit to the sunroof here, but maybe not the back row seats. So now we're in the fourth row seats, and these, as I mentioned before when we showed you the trunk, are foldable. So because of that, it's sitting on a right angle, so it's not that comfortable. And in terms of the legroom as well, we folded the third row seats, but it's still not that spacious in terms of the legroom. As for headroom, it's not too bad. It's the same because as you saw from the floating roof, and there's no slant at the back, so you'll still have a lot of headroom here. But as for the comfort in the seats, if you don't call shotgun, you'll have the bad seats. So everyone, how did you like the new Kia Sedona that we showed you today? Well, it's very popular even after its release or the initial release in Korea. And as you can see, the media is really raving about it as well. It will range in the United States from $30,000 to $47,000 depending on the trim and the option levels because it has been equipped with a lot of new safety features. And as for the safety features, we'll be able to test them during our test drive, so please stay tuned. If you have any comments or questions, please post them down below, and thank you for watching.